Headlines exploded across every screen. 12 federal judges rule against Trump, legal winning streak exposed. The words scrolled relentlessly, flashing red across cable networks, while newsroom chatter escalated into a chorus of disbelief. Social media feeds lit up with screenshots, memes, and hashtags that seemed to materialize by the second. Winning streak myth, rule of law, judicial reality. Every ping of a notification added to the growing tension. Inside the courtrooms, cameras lingered on the solemn faces of judges whose rulings had, one by one, dismantled the narrative of invincibility. Slow zooms captured the weight of the bench, pillars of impartial authority set against a backdrop of public spectacle. Papers shuffled. Gavel taps echoed faintly, punctuating the growing drama. Every detail, light reflecting off polished wood, the faint furrow of a brow, the press scribbling furiously, felt cinematic, as if the country itself were holding its breath. Meanwhile, across the nation, the man at the center of it all remained a figure of confident defiance. Public claims of an untouchable streak collided violently with an unflinching reality. 12 separate rulings, 12 undeniable statements of judicial authority. The contrast was jarring. What had once been portrayed as unassailable dominance now teetered on the edge of exposure. The room crackled with tension. Analysts whispered into microphones. Reporters typed furiously. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens. The myth of invincibility was not merely challenged, it was under siege, and the unfolding drama demanded attention. Every pause, every headline, every reaction amplified the stakes. FOMO gripped the audience. What comes next unravels the myth no one saw coming. The narrative tension was palpable, the contrast undeniable. Spectacle versus substance, ego versus law, narrative versus reality. And then, just as the world seemed to settle in shock, the truth loomed over the headlines, impossible to ignore. The so-called streak of victories was not what it seemed. The so-called winning streak was about to be exposed for what it really was. The headlines alone told half the story. 12 federal judges had ruled against Trump, yet the weight of the moment went far deeper than a tally of losses. This wasn't just a collection of legal setbacks. It was a confrontation with the very idea of invincibility. For decades, the narrative had been carefully constructed. A leader untouchable, a figure immune to scrutiny, a streak of victories that seemed almost mythic. Now that myth was colliding with reality, and the consequences rippled far beyond the courtroom walls. The stakes were staggering. Every ruling chipped away at credibility, exposing a gap between performative claims and enforceable law. Citizens, voters, and allies alike were forced to reconcile two conflicting truths: the public persona of unstoppable dominance and the private reality of repeated judicial rebukes. What had once been a story of unyielding triumph now carried the weight of institutional authority asserting itself with calm, methodical precision. Across the nation, the contrast was striking. Television screens split between clips of Trump delivering confident, defiant speeches and excerpts from judicial opinions dismantling his claims. Spectacle met accountability. Volume collided with rigor. On one side, bluster and bravado. On the other, reasoned legal judgment, impartiality, and a system designed to withstand pressure. Every press conference, every tweet, every courtroom statement served as a reminder. Leadership is measured not by perception, but by outcomes. Beyond the immediate theatrics, the implications for democracy were profound. Institutions exist to safeguard fairness and consistency, to ensure that no one, regardless of fame, power, or influence, stands above the law. Repeated court losses weren't merely embarrassing, they were a stress test for governance. Public trust hinges on belief that rules apply equally, that promises of invincibility are not confused with actual competence, and that spectacle cannot replace substance. Analysts, commentators, and citizens all felt the tension. Every overturned claim, every carefully worded opinion, every restrained yet decisive ruling reinforced the same message. The myth of a winning streak was fracturing. The political stakes were immense. Allies reevaluated strategies. Opponents saw opportunity. And the public, caught between fascination and disbelief, watched as reality slowly eclipsed narrative. Mini-drama beats kept audiences glued. A snippet of Trump proclaiming dominance, juxtaposed against a judge's measured declaration. The court finds in favor of the opposing party. A silent pause, a camera lingering on the gavel, the room's subtle tension palpable. Each ruling was a beat in a larger story, a crescendo building toward inevitable revelation. And yet, even as the nation absorbed the unfolding truth, one fact loomed larger than the rest. These weren't isolated incidents or flukes of the legal system. They were part of a deeper, consistent pattern, a story of repeated miscalculations and institutional accountability that few had truly noticed. But these weren't isolated cases. They were part of a pattern that few had noticed. For years, the narrative was clear. Trump was a master of the courtroom, a titan of litigation, a man whose winning streak supposedly left opponents and judges alike in awe. Headlines, rallies, and social media amplified this mythology, portraying every minor victory as proof of unassailable brilliance. In interviews, he boasted, repeating the mantra of invincibility. "Nobody beats me in court. Nobody. It's a perfect record." Volume and confidence substituted for scrutiny, blurring the line between reality and legend. But the truth, as always, told a far more complex story. Behind the bluster, a pattern emerged, one of exaggeration, selective reporting, and carefully curated narratives. Legal losses, setbacks, and procedural defeats were often minimized, glossed over, or spun into victories through rhetoric. A dropped injunction became a strategic retreat. A reversed decision became a temporary obstacle. Spectacle overshadowed substance, and the public rarely saw the meticulous reasoning of judges dismantling claims point by point. The history of courtroom theatrics was long. From campaign finance cases to civil suits, from bankruptcy filings to election-related disputes, Trump consistently leaned on bravado as a shield against scrutiny. He turned procedural arguments into media moments, transforming legal briefs into sound bites and courtrooms into stages. Critics noted the pattern. When volume increased, veracity often diminished. The louder the claim, the less it reflected reality. Contrast framed the narrative starkly. On one side stood the figure of relentless confidence, arrogant, theatrical, unyielding. On the other, the slow, deliberate precision of the judicial system, impartial and incorruptible. Judges did not shout, they reasoned. Courts did not posture, they adjudicated. Every claim of triumph carried the shadow of accountability, waiting patiently for the moment of reckoning. For the public watching, the contrast was electrifying. Clips of self-assured proclamations collided with official rulings, exposing inconsistencies that could not be explained away. The narrative of invincibility began to unravel, not through spectacle, but through methodical, relentless truth. Each ruling chipped away at the myth. Each analysis underlined the difference between image and reality. And yet, as the pattern solidified, a greater drama was brewing. The legal universe, impartial and precise, had not yet delivered its full verdict on the myth of invincibility. Every boast, every amplified claim, every televised declaration had set the stage for something far more consequential: a confrontation with undeniable judicial authority. And every claim of triumph set him up for an even harsher reckoning. While headlines screamed and social media erupted, a quieter drama was unfolding behind the courtroom doors. The federal judiciary, often unseen, rarely sensationalized, stood as the ultimate counterweight to spectacle. These were not actors seeking applause. They were guardians of process, trained to uphold law and principle even under extraordinary pressure. Every gavel strike, every written opinion, every procedural decision was rooted in decades of experience, study, and moral responsibility. Judges who ruled against Trump did not act impulsively. Their careers were forged in crises, financial collapses, political upheavals, and constitutional tests that demanded unwavering attention to fairness and detail. They had witnessed the pendulum of public opinion swing wildly, yet remained anchored in precedent, logic, and impartiality. This was authority earned, not claimed, a stark contrast to the flamboyant declarations of victory that had become the hallmark of the antagonist. Procedural rigor was their weapon. While the world watched for theatrics, judges dissected arguments meticulously, parsing legal language, weighing evidence, and anticipating counterclaims. Their decisions were not headlines. They were carefully constructed blueprints of accountability. Each ruling carried layers of reasoning that, when combined, revealed patterns invisible to the casual observer. Consistency, fairness, and a steadfast commitment to the rule of law. Empathy for the institution comes from understanding the pressure they endure. High-profile cases invite scrutiny from the press, attacks from partisan figures, and the weight of national expectation. Yet these guardians remain disciplined, impartial, and composed. They are the calm in the storm, the steady hand that ensures justice is measured, not performative. Every motion, every ruling, every objection handled with poise reinforces a simple truth. Leadership is not about spectacle. It is about responsibility and outcomes. Beyond individual judges, the institutional system itself acts as a protagonist. Clerks, procedural officers, marshals, and legal aides all contribute to a network of resilience designed to withstand pressure from powerful figures. Their training is exhaustive, their preparation meticulous. Each participant knows that mistakes have consequences, not only for the parties involved, but for public trust in the system itself. This collective discipline is a moral and civic triumph, invisible in the moment, yet monumental in effect. As Trump's narrative of invincibility grew louder, these unsung heroes prepared silently. Their decades of experience, their commitment to truth, and their understanding of consequences formed a lattice of authority that would soon be impossible to ignore. Every carefully penned opinion, every calculated procedural step, was a rehearsal for the ultimate test, confronting a public figure whose mythology depended on ignoring accountability. The contrast could not have been sharper. Where bluster and volume dominated, calm and preparation prevailed. Where spectacle sought to intimidate, reason and principle awaited. Every observer, politicians, journalists, citizens, would soon witness the culmination of this quiet, relentless authority. All of their training and dedication would soon make the myth crumble before the nation. One by one, the rulings came. 12 federal judges, across multiple circuits, delivered decisions that quietly but relentlessly chipped away at the carefully curated narrative of invincibility. Each opinion, measured in tone yet precise in reasoning, added weight to a truth that was becoming impossible to ignore. The myth of a flawless legal record was collapsing under scrutiny. The first ruling arrived almost like a whisper, a procedural setback framed in polite legal language. Analysts dissected the opinion in real time, parsing words that would, in hindsight, become clear indicators of a pattern. Clips of Trump's previous claims of always winning flashed across screens, juxtaposed against calm judicial explanations that left no room for exaggeration. Pause after pause, the contrast became stark. Bluster versus rigor, volume versus veracity. With each subsequent ruling, tension built. Judges cited precedents, dissected arguments, and applied the law with unwavering impartiality. In one courtroom, a motion dismissed with surgical precision. In another, a challenge over election-related disputes rejected point by point. Reactions were immediate. Aides whispered urgently. Lawyers conferred behind screens, and reporters' cameras lingered on expressions ranging from disbelief to quiet satisfaction. Each ruling acted as a mini-drama beat, punctuating the narrative with a rhythm that audiences could almost feel. Social media magnified the drama. Every ruling was a moment of viral tension, gifs of furrowed brows, hashtags analyzing the streak, opinion threads debating the legal rationale. Citizens, political commentators, and rival campaign teams alike followed the unfolding story with a mix of suspense and fascination. Each decision was more than a judgment. It was a statement about accountability, and the public could sense the growing momentum of truth. By the seventh ruling, the pattern was undeniable. Analysts no longer asked if the narrative was faltering. They asked how it could survive. Clips of confident speeches now felt hollow against the backdrop of meticulous judicial reasoning. Mini-drama beats intensified. Courtroom gavel strikes, the shuffle of papers, whispers exchanged among legal teams, and the subtle tension of history watching in real time. As the 11th decision landed, the myth teetered. Even loyal allies could not ignore the systematic dismantling of the narrative. Every ruling amplified the next, building toward an inescapable climax. The country watched as confidence met principle, and the stage was set for the 12th, final ruling. By the 12th ruling, the illusion had almost entirely evaporated. The 12th ruling landed like a gavel, striking the final chord of a symphony, measured, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Across courtrooms, judges had, over weeks and months, applied the law with surgical precision. Each opinion, while calm and unemotional, systematically dismantled the carefully constructed winning streak narrative. Arguments were deconstructed line by line, procedural missteps highlighted, contradictions exposed, claims of overreach meticulously rebutted. There was no need for theatrics. The authority of reason spoke louder than any rally or headline. Observers felt the weight of each decision. Reporters leaned closer, pens paused mid-sentence. Legal analysts nodded slowly, voices dropping as they described the significance. Even political aides, accustomed to crisis management, could not mask the gravity. The antagonist's confidence, once seemingly impenetrable, visibly faltered. Social media mirrored the tension. Threads paused, reactions mounted, and hashtags acknowledging the unraveling streak surged. Each clip of courtroom reasoning contrasted sharply with prior public boasts, amplifying the drama of reality triumphing over perception. The cinematic beat of silence after each revelation was deafening. No raised voices, no grand gestures, just the unassailable clarity of logic and law. Each paragraph of an opinion, each citation of precedent, each concise rebuttal was a subtle but devastating counterpunch. The narrative of invincibility, long reinforced by rhetoric and spectacle, began to crack under the relentless application of principle. Public perception shifted in real time. Citizens watching at home, analysts dissecting the rulings on live streams, and journalists capturing reactions all felt the same inevitability. The myth was no longer tenable. Law and procedure had done what bluster never could, expose the limits of showmanship and hold truth to account. The spectacle had met its match, and calm, reasoned authority prevailed. The final impact was cinematic in its subtlety. There were no shouts, no dramatic announcements, just the undeniable cumulative force of 12 separate judgments, each reinforcing the last. In the quiet but absolute clarity of the courts, the illusion of invincibility was exposed for what it truly was, carefully curated bravado without foundation. And suddenly the narrative of the untouchable streak shattered before millions. The moment the rulings were reported, the digital world ignited. Social media feeds flooded with clips of courtrooms, tweets dissecting each decision, and hashtags like "Wang winning streak exposed" and "Wang rule of law" trending across platforms. Memes contrasted confident proclamations with measured judicial responses, subtle yet scathing, humorous yet undeniably truthful. Within minutes, millions of eyes were fixed on the unfolding narrative, replaying the silent but decisive victories of the judiciary. Analysts and commentators seized the moment. On news panels, legal experts explained the ramifications. 12 separate rulings, consistent reasoning, and an unbroken thread of accountability. Even rival politicians acknowledged the impact, highlighting the judiciary's role in stabilizing public trust. Journalists described the rulings as a masterclass in procedural rigor, emphasizing the quiet power of institutions when confronted with spectacle. Markets, too, responded, not with dramatic swings, but with measured stability. Investors noted the reinforcement of rule-based governance and the reduction of uncertainty. The story was no longer about personal theatrics. It was about systems functioning as intended. The calm authority of procedure reassured those watching, underscoring that competence and consistency carry weight far beyond loud proclamations. Public discourse began to shift. Conversations that had previously centered on charisma and bravado moved toward substance, the credibility of claims, the importance of due process, and the long-term impact of repeated accountability. Citizens debated not whether the winning streak existed, but what its collapse meant for leadership and trust. The mythology of invincibility gave way to recognition of restraint, expertise, and the quiet heroism of the legal system. Cinematic moments continued to punctuate the narrative. Close-ups of judges reviewing briefs, reporters' cameras lingering on reactions in the press gallery, the shuffle of papers signaling the weight of decisions rendered. Each clip reinforced the central message: order, reason, and adherence to principle triumph over spectacle. And yet, the full significance extended beyond social media trends or viral moments. The rulings weren't merely a rebuke. They were a demonstration of what happens when unchecked claims meet systematic accountability. The public had witnessed more than legal victories. They had glimpsed the limits of performative power, the consequences of inflated narratives, and the enduring value of principled authority. But the deeper lesson went beyond a single set of rulings. It questioned the limits of unchecked claims. In the quiet aftermath, the lesson became clear. Authority is not measured by volume, nor is leadership defined by spectacle. 12 rulings, delivered with restraint and precision, had exposed a simple but profound truth: competence, procedure, and accountability will always outlast defiance and theatrics. What had once been portrayed as invincibility now lay bare, undone not by outrage, but by steady, principled action. The narrative extended beyond one individual or one series of cases. It spoke to the enduring power of institutions built to uphold fairness and justice, the quiet guardians of public trust who labor without fanfare. Democracy does not thrive on grandiose claims or performative defiance. It thrives when systems function as designed, when principles are applied consistently, and when leaders are held to the same standards as everyone else. For citizens watching, the crescendo was both subtle and profound. Respect for law became tangible, accountability was reaffirmed, and the public saw, in real time, the tangible benefits of measured, principled authority. Confidence in institutions, often taken for granted, was strengthened, while the allure of bluster and bravado dimmed. The ultimate takeaway resonates universally. Leadership is earned through outcomes, not declarations. Trust is built through diligence, not exaggeration. And the enduring strength of society lies not in spectacle, but in principle. Moments like this remind us that real authority is principled, not performative. A quiet, steadfast force that protects values bigger than any one individual. In a world often dazzled by noise, the judiciary's methodical dismantling of a myth was a masterclass in patience, rigor, and dignity. A reminder that true power, when applied responsibly, speaks louder than any boast ever could. Moments like this remind us that real authority is principled, not performative. As the final rulings settled into the record books, one truth remained undeniable. The so-called winning streak had been a mirage. What stood unwavering, however, was the power of law, integrity, and diligence. The story wasn't merely about courtroom victories. It was a testament to the enduring strength of institutions, the courage of impartial authority, and the importance of holding even the most powerful accountable. Viewers are invited to reflect: what does it mean when claims of invincibility are dismantled by principle and procedure? What lessons can we draw about trust, leadership, and the value of competence over spectacle? This isn't just a story about one individual or one series of cases. It's a lesson for every citizen who believes in the resilience of democratic systems. Imagine the ripple effect: discussions at dinner tables, debates in newsrooms, analysis on social media, all channels of engagement that reinforce the same central truth. Institutions, when respected and upheld, protect everyone. Leaders, when measured against principle rather than charisma, earn lasting credibility. Moments like these remind us why accountability matters, why diligence counts, and why spectacle can never replace substance. So take action, share the story, discuss it with others, and witness the quiet victories that shape the course of a nation. Subscribe to stay informed and engaged, because understanding the balance of power, law, and accountability equips us all to recognize when truth prevails and when it must be defended. In the end, the narrative is crystal clear. The winning streak wasn't real, but the power of law, integrity, and diligence always is. Closing line. The winning streak wasn't real, but the power of law, integrity, and diligence always is.